Well, good morning and welcome to the Map Talk on Fewer Bumps Ahead, Tucson's Roads Improve. I'm Jennifer Poland and I'll be the host of the Map Talk today. I'm the Making Action Possible Map Dashboard Coordinator and a research economist in the Economic and Business Research Center in the Eller College at the University of Arizona. My email address is listed here, jpoland@eller.arizona.edu. You're welcome to email me any questions that you might have following the presentation or any questions you might have regarding the map dashboard in general. I'm joined today by George Hammond, the Director of the Economic and Business Research Center at the University of Arizona. You'll be emailing him questions throughout the presentation if you have them, and I'll give you his email address in just a moment. So here are a few details about today's Map Talk webinar. The Map Talks will be recorded. We've recorded all of our Map Talks. We published them on the MAP website. This one will be published later today. We encourage you to share it with your colleagues or with anyone else that you think might find this information interesting. You can find all of our recorded Map Talks in the library section of the MAP dashboard. You'll see when you go to the library on the left, there's a category called Map Talks, and if you click on that, you'll find all of our archived Map Talks there. The webinar will be in conference mode, meaning everyone will be muted except for the presenter. At the end, we'll have a question and answer session, and I'll unmute everyone at that time. If though you have questions throughout the presentation, you're welcome to email them to George. His email address is ghammond@email.arizona.edu. You're also welcome to email George or I anytime after the presentation if you have follow-up questions. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sustaining sponsors who help make the MAP dashboard possible. They include the Tucson Electric Power, Thomas R. Brown Foundation, and the Freeport McMoran Foundation. I'd also like to acknowledge our partnership with the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona, Pima Association of Governments, the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, Sun Corridor, and then the University of Arizona. Our cross-sector partnership has helped us to reach a wide range of community members, from local government to nonprofit and business communities, as well as educators and regional economic development, and we're thankful for their contributions. In case you haven't heard, the MAP dashboard was awarded an International Impact Award in fall of 2018. This was awarded to us by the Community Indicators Consortium, which is a international community indicators organization that explores other indicator projects like the MAP dashboard. This award was given to us for our demonstrated ability to drive positive community change in Southern Arizona. I also wanted to mention, in case you're not aware, that we have two features in the Arizona Daily Star each month. We have a health feature that features different economic health indicators from the MAP dashboard on the first Monday of each month in the health section, on the front page of the health section in the Star. And then we also have on the last Sunday of each month a feature on the front page of the business section that features different economic indicators that we have on the MAP dashboard. We also include monthly data in this feature that looks at employment, unemployment rate, jobs, home prices, and housing permits monthly, and tracks that data. So look for those in the Star on the first Monday of each month and the last Sunday of each month. And I know many of you are aware of our core indicators that we explore on the MAP dashboard across a wide range of different socioeconomic indicators. We look at these for the Tucson metropolitan area and compare them to other metropolitan areas around the western U.S., to the 10 western states, the 15 Arizona counties, and the U.S. But in addition to those core indicators, we also write 2 feature articles each month, approximately 2 each month, and these are on a wide range of topics. Here are just a few examples. How do renters fare? This looked at rental affordability. We've also written on housing affordability and home prices, articles on Arizona's role in border trade, We look at explore in our community spotlight how different organizations around Southern Arizona use the map dashboard. It helps to kind of spur ideas on different ways that you might use the map dashboard. Also, if you look at the images on the bottom, that hotspots in 4 Arizona cities, this is a white paper that we featured on the map dashboard. We commissioned white papers from University of Arizona faculty. These are white papers that are written in their area of expertise. And so this particular one explored the relationship between alcohol serving establishments and violent crime. So that hotspots in 4 Arizona cities. And that image in the middle, how much has your community improved? So in addition to looking at all of that metro, county, state level data, we also write several articles each year that focus on the city and town level. And these look at kind of different indicators like educational attainment, poverty, housing cost burden for places like the city of Tucson, South Tucson, Sierra Vista, Douglas, Marana, Oro Valley, and you can compare how your city or town compares across different indicators on the map. So all of these articles can be found in the library section. They're all archived by category. So if you're interested in infrastructure articles, you can go into our library and sort by infrastructure and find all of our infrastructure related articles. But everything we've written or published, all videos we've done to date can be found in the library. So now let's move on to what we're all here for today, and that's this article on fewer bumps in the road ahead, Tucson's roads improve. And so this is an article we recently published on the map dashboard that explored road roughness in the Tucson urban area across varying road types. This article was a follow-up to a previously published article, two previously published articles called the Pothole Index and the Rough Roads article that we published back in 2015. And so we're going to start there and look at what that data that we published in 2015 said, and then we're going to start talking about how things have changed since then. So here is an infographic from our article that we published in 2015 using 2012 data, and this looked at how Tucson's roads, major road types, compared across different urban areas. So this pothole index looked at the road conditions and weighted them by the volume of traffic on those roads, and we came up with a number here that compared Tucson to different urban areas. These are the same regions that we compare to when we look at our core indicators on the map dashboard. And so you can see here clearly that Tucson did very poorly compared to our peer urban areas with that 2012 data. Tucson ranked last in terms of road conditions for all major road types when weighted by daily vehicle miles. What we've done this year is we've published two different articles that really disaggregated this data and broke it down and looked at it in detail. The first article was called Putting Miles on Our Cars, and this looked at different driving patterns in the Tucson urban area and how those have changed over time. And then the second article, Fewer Bumps Ahead, looked at road roughness for these different road types and how those have changed over time. Before we get into the data, I want to talk a little bit about the actual boundary or the region that we're looking at for this data. So typically on the map dashboard, we talk about the Tucson Metropolitan Statistical Area. That is all of Pima County. For this article, we're looking at the Tucson urban area. This is a federally defined urbanized boundary. It's defined by the Census Bureau based on the 2010 census. In 2020, we'll get a new defined urban area for the Tucson urban area. But here you can see in the map, it's this area highlighted, outlined in red. So it's much smaller than the Tucson metropolitan area, which is all of Pima County and would include places like Ajo, but it's also much larger than just the city of Tucson. So those of you who are familiar with the Tucson region, you know that this area, while it encompasses a large portion, all of the city of Tucson, it also extends south of the city, east of the city into the Tanque Verde Valley, north into the Catalina foothills, Oro Valley, and then a tiny part of Marana up there. So again, Tucson urban area, much larger than just the city, but smaller than the metropolitan area. So within this article, we explore 4 major road types: interstates, freeways and expressways, other principal arterials, and minor arterials. Interstates include I-10 and I-19 in our urban area. Freeways and expressways include only Aviation Highway in the Tucson urban area. When we talk about Phoenix, this would include expressways like the 101 and the 202. Other principal arterials these are our major surface streets. Roads, higher speed, multiple lane roads like Grant, Broadway Boulevard, Wilmot, Oracle, River Road. Our minor arterials are our smaller surface streets, ones that tend to connect into our neighborhoods. These include roads like Tucson Boulevard, Pima Street, Columbus Boulevard. And so we look at these major roadways for the Tucson urban area that have a high volume of traffic. We do not include neighborhood roads into our analysis here today. So when we published the 2012 pothole index, and then we wanted to publish the 2013 and 2014 and 2015 data, we ran into a few limitations with the data that we found moving forward. The first is that there is not a standard procedure for calculating the IRI data. This is the International Roughness Index. This is the data that calculates how rough our roads are. These are, they send out cars with sensors on each of the wheels to calculate how rough the roads are. And so there's a left sensor and a right sensor on each vehicle. And so there is not a standard procedure for how they're combining that left side and right side data and then smoothing that data. We've read several technical reports on this, and those technical reports suggest that the IRI data is technically sound despite the different methods used to calculate that data. It's also the international standard for comparing road roughness, and it is the recommended method for measurement of road roughness by the Federal Highway Administration. So after reading all of those reports, we feel that the data is valid and we can compare it across different regions. More problematic in that data up until 2017 were that there were varying report rates and over-reporting rates. And so we'll start with the first one. The varying report rates are that not all of the urban areas that we compare to were reporting a large sample of their roadways. So to the credit of Tucson and Phoenix and the reporting agencies for Tucson and Phoenix urban areas, they have been reporting at over 90% for all of the years of data we have. They have great report rates. They're sampling more than 90% of their roadways, of our roadways, and reporting that data to the Federal Highway Administration. That was not the case for all of our urban areas. Some of them were reporting only 30 or 40% of their road miles. So maybe they were only reporting 30 to 40% of their principal arterials. And so this made us question whether or not it was a true representation of their road roughness for that road type. And then the other issue that we ran across was actually an issue at the Federal Highway Administration's reporting of minor arterial data, and that is that select minor arterial data was being over-reported, meaning they were reporting more miles of road roughness than they actually had miles of roadway system. So we did not report any of this data over the last few years because of some of these issues. In 2017, all of these issues have been resolved. All of our urban areas are now reporting at over 90%, and there's no more over-reporting of minor arterial data. The reason I'm bringing this up is because if you go on to the article and you explore this article in more depth, you'll find that we don't have trend data for some of our urban areas, and that's because we've chosen to exclude those urban areas that had low reporting rates or over-reporting of minor arterial. So for example, you will only find data for the Portland urban area for 2017, where we are comfortable with their report rates and that there is no over-reporting of data. And so now, why do we care about road roughness? Well, one reason we care about it is because deteriorated roads increase user cost. The 2018 Urban Roads Report found that the average motorist in the U.S. is paying nearly $600 annually. This is a total of $130 billion nationally in additional vehicle operating costs as a result of driving on roads in need of repair. So roads in bad condition cost us more money as drivers. The second is commuter comfort. None of us want to be driving down pothole-filled roads. And then the third is better traffic flow. So when we have roads that are in bad condition with lots of potholes or roughness, what we see is that, traffic is slowing and starting to go over those potholes or swerving to avoid those potholes. So roads that are in good condition have better traffic flow. Now, before we get into the actual data from the Fewer Bumps Ahead article, I want to put into perspective why we selected those 4 roadway types that we use. And this comes down to an article that we wrote several months ago called Putting Miles on Our Car, and explored the traffic patterns for the Tucson urban area and what volume of traffic we were spending on each of these different major roadway types. So the first graph we'll look at here shows Tucson at the top, and this is the percentage of daily vehicle miles traveled on surface streets. So other principal arterials and minor arterials are streets like Grant, Broadway, Wilmot, Pima Street, Oracle. These are our surface streets. This is important to consider that we're spending over 70% of our daily vehicle miles on our surface streets for a couple of reasons. One, these surface streets tend to deteriorate quicker than interstates because there's a lot of stopping and starting on our surface streets because of lights. And they also tend to be a little bit slower traffic roads because they have lights that you have to stop at, a lot of turning left and right off of these roads. So Tucson is substantially higher than many of our other urban areas. We see over 70%. Albuquerque's next there at about 58%. Places like San Diego, just over 30%. And we'll see in a moment that's because San Diego has a lot of interstate travel. Also, this is important because funding is different depending upon the roadway type. So funding, this area that we're discussing today includes the city of Tucson funding, the county funding, state and federal funding, and each roadway type is funded, it has a different funding mechanism or ratio. We talk a little bit more about funding and putting miles on our cars if you're interested in that aspect of this. And so different funding and a higher deterioration on our surface streets. So this is why we chose in our Fewer Bumps Ahead article to focus on those surface streets, on those other principal arterials, because we drive so much on them. We spend such a large majority of our time on those types of roadways. So here's the data for the interstates and the other freeways. You see Tucson at the bottom, where we have very small percentage of interstate and other freeway travel. That other freeways and expressways is Aviation Highway. You see San Diego up there at the top with more than about 45% of their travel is done on interstates. Their daily vehicle miles is happening on the interstates there. So now this is our first graph I want to show you from Fewer Bumps in the Road Ahead, and this looks at our other principal arterials. So again, those roads like Grant, Broadway, Oracle, and what percentage of those roadways are in poor condition. And so here we see it's 19.5%. So just under 20% of our other principal or our major surface streets are in poor condition. Tucson has the 3rd lowest percentage of other principal arterials rated poor compared to our peer urban areas around the western U.S. Only Salt Lake City and Las Vegas have a lower percentage. San Diego has the highest percentage. But again, if you remember those 2 graphs that we just looked at, San Diego actually has a really small percentage of volume on their other principal arterials compared to their interstates. So Tucson doing really well here compared to other urban areas. Obviously still room for improvement. We would, prefer to see this number as close to 0 as possible, but again, we are doing really well. And when we look at trend information in a few minutes, you'll see that the trend has really declined over time with our roads improving substantially over the last 6 years. So the next thing, we want to kind of flip that and look at what percentage of our major surface streets are in good condition. And so here you see Tucson doesn't fare quite as well. We're in the middle of our urban areas at 27% or just under 27%, a very slight increase from 2016, 0.3%, and just a little bit behind the US. So the International Roughness Index has 4 major classifications for roadway conditions. So the first is poor, then mediocre, fair, and good. So what we're seeing is about 47% of our roadways in good or poor condition. That means over 50% of our roadways are in fair or mediocre condition. Our principal arterials are in fair or mediocre condition. So there is definitely room for improving those roads and bumping them up into that good classification for our major surface streets. Now here, if we combined all of the different roadway types, so I was interested to see what happens if we look at not just those major surface streets, but what if we include those smaller surface streets like our minor arterials and then our interstates and our freeways as well? What happens to Tucson's ranking? And so we fall below the US with about 33% of our total roadways, and those are our major roadways, in poor condition. But if you remember, back to one of our earlier slides where we looked at the pothole index, we were ranked last there in total roadway condition. So we have seen a substantial improvement since 2012, but obviously there's still work to be done here in improving our ranking compared to other urban areas and decreasing the number of poor rated roads that we have in our system. So here is Tucson's trend. You can see that in 2012, when we published that pothole index, we had nearly 40% of our major surface streets in poor condition. We saw a decline in 2013, and then in 2014, we saw a little bit of an increase in 2015. This could be from a variety of factors, one of which is there could have been increase in road work happening on those types of roadways during 2015, which would have increased the road roughness during that particular year. But most importantly, what we've seen is that continued decline in 2016 and 2017. And we've gone from almost 40% of our other principal arterials, our major surface streets, in poor condition to just under 20% in poor condition. So definitely making great progress here. And then we can also look at Phoenix, because both Tucson and Phoenix, neither of them, excuse me, neither Tucson or Phoenix had any of those over or under reporting issues that we saw with some of the other urban areas. We see that in Phoenix, they started out with less than 10% of their roads in their major surface streets in poor condition in 2012 and have increased almost every single year since to just under 30% in 2017. So while Tucson urban area is making progress, that is not the case for Phoenix in terms of their surface streets. So major conclusions from today as we start to wrap up is that Tucson's road conditions have improved compared to our pure urban areas. If you remember that pothole index infographic, we were last. Now we're third. We have the third lowest for our other principal arterials, and we're kind of in the bottom middle of the pack if we look at our total roadway system compared to our urban areas now in 2017. Tucson has a heavy volume of traffic on their arterial roadways. Again, this is important for those reasons I mentioned earlier. Those types of roadways are quicker to deteriorate, as well as funding mechanisms for those roadways are different than what you see for interstates. Road roughness has declined significantly over the past 6 years. We just saw that in that trend graph, going from almost 40% on our major surface streets to less than 20% in 6 years. And that's a great improvement, I think. Finally, this road roughness data includes high volume roads, not neighborhood streets. So while you may live on a neighborhood street that's very bumpy, this is looking at the average of our major surface streets. So this is averaging all of those roadways that are in our system and looking at what percentage are poor. And then that comes to my last point, is that road conditions may vary across the region. Again, your commute may be bumpy while your neighbor's is not. This comes down to 30% of those roads are in poor condition. If you happen to be driving on those particular roads, you're going to have a bumpy commute. While if you chose to drive on a different route, your commute may be less bumpy. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about the data, that this is an average of all of the roadways in the system. And before we open up to questions, I just want to encourage you to subscribe for updates. Many of you probably heard about the Map Talk from our newsletter. If you didn't, if your colleague forwarded you this information, sign up for our newsletter. It's a great way to stay up to date on our Map Talks, upcoming articles that we have published, new data releases. And then if you have any questions, you can submit Ask a Researcher about data on the website, about today's data. You can go onto the website, submit a form with Ask a Researcher. Either myself or one of the other researchers in the Economic and Business Research Center will get back with you to help answer that question. And then I want to plug an upcoming event we have on July 24th at 8 a.m. We're co-hosting an event with the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona. It will be on their campus out east. It's going to discuss housing affordability in the Tucson metropolitan area. It's going to talk about home prices, homeowner and rental affordability, housing cost burden, and housing costs relative to the U.S. So how do we kind of stack up compared to the U.S.? So we'll announce this in our monthly newsletter. We'll also have sign up available on the MAP website. So I'm going to unmute everybody, and now you are welcome to ask questions.
Hi, Jennifer. Great job. This is George Hammond. Could you talk a little bit about the data release schedule? We have the data for 2017. Talk a little bit about when we'll get the 2018 data and when we'll hear more analysis on the dashboards.
Sure. The data typically starts there's several different data that we work with from the Federal Highway Administration. We'll see the 2018 data start to kind of trickle out at the end of the year. It typically takes until the early part of the next year to get all of the data that we need to publish the road roughness data. We tend to get the daily vehicle mile data, so the 40 miles on our car data prior to the road roughness. So anticipate maybe that early next year, and then update on this later in the session. The slides will be available. I just want to mention again that after we're finished here today, I will publish the map talk on the website. You'll be able to find it on the homepage for the next couple weeks, and then it will move into the library under the map talk category. You'll be able to link to the webinar there. If you want the particular slides, just the slides and not access to the video, you can send me an email and we can. My email is jpollens, ULLEN, @eller.arizona.edu. Are there any other questions today? All right, well, I want to thank all of you for your time. I hope that you found the Map Talk valuable. And if you did, please feel free to share it with your colleagues and friends. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.